um, and welcome to week 6. I think it's time we talked about how to tune your instruments. So it can be complicated just because you don't just have a horn with one slide that you adjust, pull out to go lower or push in to go sharper as you would with, for example, a flute or a clarinet. It's just one change you have to make. With the horn, it's you've got your F horn, of course, so you got your. But then if you think about it, you also have a horn in E, so you have this horn to tune. Then you have a horn in E flat when you add that length of tubing. So all these little valve slides also have to be adjusted. So it's a bigger job than tuning a woodwind instrument, and it's an even bigger job if you have a double horn. So I'll touch on the double horn because that is important, and I'm more than just a couple of you I think are playing on double horns this term. So you should probably figure out how it is to make the F horn in tune with the B flat horn. So that's a whole extra group of horns that you have. I think if you count them up, there's like 14 valve combinations if you have a double horn. So that's a lot. That's a lot of tuning slides to be paying attention to. But in the beginning, we'll just worry about first of all, how to find your main tuning slide. So that'll be very obvious if you have a single horn. And in my case, I have 2 main tuning slides. And if you look at where my B flat thumb valve is located, the key's way up here, but the valve actually is way down there. So, and it runs straight into this piece of tubing. So that's a pretty clear indicator that that's my B flat tuning slide. So this is my F. So if you're I guess in band, you probably tune to the B flat concert. So once you have it on if you're just using a tuner on your stand, say that's just a little bit high. All you have to do, pull out just a small amount, and that will bring it just a bit lower. And then of course, conversely, if you're flat, push it in, shorten the length of tubing. That's a much higher F. That doesn't sound good to my ear, and it doesn't feel comfortable to play. So in my case, my F slide's usually about 3/4 of an inch out. And actually, it's quite obvious where it has been all those years that I've had this horn, which is more than 25 years. Because look, there's a very clear indication. So I've found the spot where it's best located for the most part. But I should back up and just explain that before you make those slide adjustments, I'm putting the cart before the horse here, and I shouldn't have done that. Before you adjust your slides, make sure that you're playing with your best centered sound, your best tone. So remember, we're not after the best pitch yet. You want to adjust the slides after you've found where that note lies best, where you grab the note with your embouchure. We've talked about this in past lessons, where you've sort of found that really nice comfortable place where you know that note lives. It has its own little shelf, and it's sitting right in the middle of that shelf. And then if it sounds high, or if it's indicated that it's high on your tuner, then you can bring it lower. But the first thing you want to do is make sure you're playing with a really good centered tone, and also with a consistent hand position, because if your hand position is changing a lot, then you're not going to have any consistency with your tuning. So whatever slide adjustments you make, they're not really going to make a difference if your hand keeps moving around in the bell. Now, the third thing is your hand can move in the bell if you've already done numbers 1 and numbers 2. So number 1, find your note. best tone possible. Number 2, make your slide adjustment. And then number 3, if you still need to make very fine adjustments, just see by closing it that tiny little bit. But that would be in certain cases where, say you have a third of a major chord, and in most contexts your slides are right where they should be, but you've got this note and the third is just sitting high as it wants to do. So then you can make it just that little bit darker. If you're in the middle of the chord, that's your voice and it's not blending and it's not fitting in with the others, with the outer voices, then it's okay to use your hand for those just minute pitch changes. So so you've done your main tuning slide, and then I think we should maybe start on the G, the open G. So then you would work at moving your second slide for that semitone interval. And then your first valve. Feels just a tiny bit high to me. I'm not looking at a tuner, I'm just using my ears. Tuners are great, but I wouldn't be 100% dependent on a tuner all the time, because I think it's really important just to open your ears and listen to. So I heard the F was a little bit high, and then we're back down to an open note. So let's do, after we've done let's do 1 and 2 together. And if your first valve and your second valve have already been adjusted, you probably won't have to do too much more in the way of adjusting. But if you do, then it's probably going to be sharp because you've added an extra length of tubing to the one that already exists. So anytime you have more tubing, it's likely to go a little bit higher. See how that sounds a little bit sharp to me. So then you could just pull out just a tiny bit on your middle valve. And third valve, you're not going to use it very often. So you can adjust the third valve. We do see quite a bit of second and third combinations on the B flat horn, but if your second has already been tuned to 1 and 2, then just leave it alone and tune your third valve. All right, you saw me emptying my slides, and that is another thing that I haven't talked to you about, and I hear it a lot in some of your videos, that gargling noise that's coming through in some of your exercises. So there are various ways of getting the, let's call it the spit if you want, or the condensation, or the water. The kids will call it the spit and they'll think it's gross, but just, everybody has a little piece of paper next to them. Actually, in band rooms they probably don't, but nowadays we all have our puppy pad that we have to dispose of after rehearsal or after a concert. So what we'll do is, I'm just going to show you what I do to empty the condensation, and that is I tip it this way. Sorry, horn. Because remember gravity. The craziest thing is I see kids all the time pulling out their slides like this to empty the water out of their slides, but they're pointing down, so there's not going to be any water in the slides. So upside down, remember gravity, and then you can pull your slide out, and there it goes, onto the puppy pad. Some horns, like mine, which is a lovely horn. It's made by Keith Berg out in the backwoods of British Columbia. He made this for me in 1994, and it's my horn for life. I've never actually wanted to have another horn after getting this one. Anyway, he put a little European style spit valve. So that's kind of like a little preemptory thing where before the water gets a chance to find its way through all this, which is more complicated, you just, every now and then, just give it a little, just kind of head it off at the pass, and that prevents it from building up. And then, if you hear that, say, probably not going to be able to demonstrate this, but if say you're playing that note and you only hear that noise on that one note, then you know it's probably in, I'm playing a B flat, so with my first valve, you know it's probably in your first valve. So that's when you push the valve down. Don't forget to push the valve down. Take it out and empty. That was my B flat first valve. And then finally, the third valve, it's just, sometimes they just call it the collector valve. It's not like we use it that much, but water often finds its way into the third valve. So if all else fails, just try your third valve. And if that doesn't work and you can still hear it, don't worry about just doing a bit of that, turning it around and around and around and around, and eventually it'll probably find its way out of the bell. So that's tuning your F horn. Now, B flat horn, I want to just quickly go over this, because for those of you who are playing on a B flat horn, I'd like you to see if you can get the two sides of the horn in tune with each other this week. So you will have a B flat tuning slide. You'll have to sort of examine your horn and see where it is, and then a good note to start on for B flat versus F is your third space C. So that's my trigger C. Now let's compare it to the one on the F horn. Actually, they're very close. So I'm going to maybe push my F slide out a little bit and my B flat slide in so I can show you how to bring them closer together. So there's quite a difference. My B flat C is a lot sharper than my F horn C. And the B flat one is really sharp. So here's where I'll pull out my B flat slide. Make sure it's in tune. That note. Now let's compare it to the F. That's a lot closer. Once you've matched them up, and that's a fairly close match, then try going down to B natural. B flat. So for the notes between third space C and going down chromatically, B, B flat, A, and A flat, those are common fingerings to both horns, which is why we tune the horns to each other using those notes. So the A flat, the G sharp is the same on both F horn and B flat horn. Going up chromatically, it all stays the same until you get to C. So that brings me to the next little bit of this lesson, which is if you have a B flat horn, and if you don't, you can go away. No, don't go away, because you might have to help a student who has a B flat horn. If you have a B flat horn, I mean a double horn, I should say, not a B flat horn. If you have a double horn, and you're finding that you're able to play up to that C that I just played you without a lot of effort, without squeezing, without it being a struggle, then it's probably a good time for you to experiment comparing those upper notes played on the F horn versus the B flat horn. So you can just start by playing a chromatic scale. And then when you get to the next note, that's G sharp, that's where we commonly switch over to the B flat horn. It's a good place to make the change because it is that common fingering for both. So you're going from an open G to a G sharp, but with your thumb down. So when your thumb is down, you're playing on this horn. When your thumb's up, you're playing on this horn. This is the bigger horn, this is the F horn, and the F horn is the best place to start for a beginner because it will encourage good breathing practices. It's just longer, so it takes a little bit more effort to get the air all the way through that horn. But that's why it's good to start out that way. And then if you develop good breathing practices and you're able to use your air in the way you should be using your air, then you can switch to the B flat side and you'll find it does help with the upper register. It's smaller and accuracy is easier on the upper side of the B flat horn. But if you're still struggling with getting the notes out on the F horn, then playing the B flat horn really isn't going to help you. It's not going to make it easier because it's only easier if you've kind of earned it, if you've made it to the point where you can play with good habits without struggling, with great use of your air. Then you'll find it's a nice little bonus to have that, but it won't help you unless you've got to that point where you're able to play up to the middle of the staff with quite a bit of ease and even up to the top of the staff. I have a little study, I'll just play it for you, and it's not from the Clevenger book, but it's from an older book that I was using years and years ago with my early students, and I think my teacher Eugene Riddick, it could have been that his teacher, my teacher's teacher was Anton Horner, who wrote this book. And I'm not even sure if it's still in print, but it's a great method book for if you've just progressed to the end of the Clevenger book and you need to go that little step further. It's a really good next step. So if you feel like you're ready to make that next step, and if you have a double horn, then this one is a good one. I'm just going to show you. It's the top of page 6. It's number 24. It's just a little scale study. For the most part, it just moves stepwise. There's I think 2 little traps in the second last bar and the last bar where it suddenly jumps. But it does go up to the D above middle C. And so there are no G sharps, A flats in this one. So that would make it the A, where you switch to your B flat horn. So I don't know if you probably can't tell from watching my vowels because the fingerings are the same anyway. But just know that anytime I'm playing above the A, then I'm using my B flat horn. So this is a good introductory study for adding the B flat horn to what you're already doing. So it's in C major. Here it goes. So try that, see how it goes, and for the rest of you, I'll email this out, and I think you should all have your books by now. And if you don't, Long and McQuaid, if Sarah has run out of books, the rest of the ones that I ordered have arrived at Long and McQuaid in U-, so they're there waiting for you. I think they have 5 or 6 more. So please don't waste any more time in getting the red book, and if you don't have it yet, I'll send out a couple of pages just for this week. And I think the last ones I sent out were low G. Yeah, so up to page 21. So if you're not up to page 21, then you can work towards that and adding those lower notes. So that would give you an octave and a half about. And if you want to move forward, please do. I think the diatonic drill on page 22 would be a good one to try. And that's number 134 on page 22. And any of the interval drills from that page, anything from 22, and just move at your own pace. If you want to keep going, then